In the safe zone that was organized by the government of Sri Lanka, you have 300,000 Tamils who are being shelled, civilians who are being shelled indiscriminately by their own government. The reports are that there is no medicine, no anesthesia for operations, including amputations, no antibiotics, and little food, and sheer terror. Why is there a media blackout? The slaughter of Tamil civilians is well documented, but unfortunately for the Tamils, it is documented internally in pictures taken by Tamil journalists trapped in the war zone. Why is there a continued media blackout in the international news? Even when pictures of civilians being bombarded indiscriminately and are broadcasted, they are not flashed on the international media except for a few on BBC and one or two that gets into the general media. Probably for many reasons. The first one, Rajapaksa didn't make the same mistake as Bashir of Sudan. Darfur has been wide open to journalists. In Sri Lanka, the government has a blackout of media in the Tamil areas, and now there's total suppression of free speech in the rest of Colombo. One thing is for sure, Rajapaksa is not stupid. He's evil, but not stupid. Amnesty International has recently dubbed Sri Lanka one of the most dangerous places in the world to report from. Reporters Without Borders has ranked Sri Lanka 165 of 173 in the 2008 World Freedom Press. It's the lowest ranking of any democratic country in the world. BBC Radio has suspended radio broadcasting in Sri Lanka after numerous radio broadcasts were found to be deliberately interfered with. And then there's the fact that 12 journalists have been killed in the last 13 years, in the last 3 years. 12 journalists, 3 years. The chief editor of the Sunday Leader, a Sinhalese man, was killed in broad daylight. I know most of you know the story, that he wrote his obituary before he was killed and stated very emphatically that if I die, let the accusation go clearly on the Sri Lankan government for his objection to their policies. But 2 days before that, the Maharaja TV studios were torched by armed thugs who stormed the building. There is total immunity for arsonists, abductors, and killers. The second reason that there's an international blackout is that the international media and governments choose to believe the story that this conflict is about fighting terror. There seems to be a trance that has come over the civilized world and the non-civilized world that somehow champions the government of Sri Lanka, that they are going to fight a terrorist organization and finally somebody will succeed. And that the Tamil people have it coming. But this is not a war on terror. It's a continuation of ethnic discrimination and a persecution by the majority of the Sinhalese people. People who have been burned, raped, marginalized, and terrorized since the British left in 1948. Next slide. As all of you know about Black July, when the Tamil Tigers arose out of the necessity to fight back and protect the Tamils from extinction. They certainly have blood on their hands as well, and no one is condoning violence. However, they have been the only protection against Rajapaksa and his final solution. And unless a political situation happens first, before the fighting starts, or during a ceasefire of both parties, then any discussion of a political solution is ludicrous. This is a fight for a people to live in freedom and dignity and not to be killed indiscriminately in their own country. When Hillary Clinton was running for president, she commented on the Tigers being listed as a terrorist group, and she questioned their classification. She said, you cannot lump all terrorists together. Because as we hear from Karen Parker this afternoon, the Tamil Tigers should not even be classified as terrorists, but as combatants. But I'll wait for Karen. She's much more eloquent than I am about that. But Hillary Clinton said, you can't lump all terrorists together. I think we have to do a much better job in clarifying what is the motivation of the Tamil Tigers. What are they fighting for in Sri Lanka? I think our mistake has been painting with such a broad brush. When Rajapaksa speaks about his war on terror, he doesn't mention the hatred against the Tamils for years. When he talks about the government victories, he doesn't mention that they kill every Tamil indiscriminately to complete ethnic cleansing. But that is what they're doing. The crisis in the safe zone is horrific. 200,000 to 300,000 civilians are trapped. The government shells them constantly, and thousands are dead and wounded. I'm going to read you excerpts from an eyewitness journal. This is from somebody who's trapped in the Vani area. The government's claim is right. The shelling is not indiscriminate. It is very much clearly targeted. They know very well that the targets are civilian. They use it for military purposes to achieve military objectives. When they wanted to chase the people out of a village, they launched shell attacks with devastating effect. At Devipuram, at a certain point of time, they found they could not round up the people in that village, so they bombed them to chase all of them out and corner them in another village, advantageous to them. Or they bombed the people, next slide, from fleeing from one village with the hope that they would capture that village. They shell attacks on roads, next slide, on fleeing civilians, or on traffic jams, or otherwise as a revenge killing to compensate their losses on the battlefield, to even the score. Another updated journal article. These are journals that come straight out of the Vani region. These are the highly congested camps. They're just sitting. I mean, as you can imagine, shells are just coming right into that camp on the bunkers and on the tents. At any time, a shell may fall amidst you and your family. With screeching sound, one lone shell will pass us and fall somewhere close by. It will fall with devastating effect. No one will expect this treacherous shell. You will be sleeping in your shelter. You may be on the road buying something. Children may be playing. Some may be having a bath. That shell will fall among the crowded refugee population. 6 or 7 will fall dead. Scores will get injured. Next slide. As you see the bunkers, if you have a shell that falls right inside the bunker, there's no protection. From this first shell, no one knows how to escape. Before a second shell falls, everyone will be in the bunkers, like parent rabbits and their kids, scurrying to a hole when they saw a vulture. Parents are dragging and lifting their children and hurrying into the bunkers. After that, about 10 to 15 shells fall in quick succession around the area. After that, there'll be a pause. People will come out and go into their usual chores. Again, in half of 1 hour's time, suddenly without any warning, shells will start falling, causing casualties. This is our daily occurrence. It takes the toll of about 70 to 80 deaths, and hundreds are injured every day. This has become a routine, a way of life. Horror fills the atmosphere. Waiting in anticipation of death, with the fear all over our bodies, expecting the visit of Kalen, the god of time and death. On March 17, 2009, the executive director of UNICEF, Mrs. Veneman, made a statement deploring the mounting toll of children killed and injured in the zone of combat between the Sri Lankan government forces and the Tamil rebels. You know, so many people are getting killed, men, women, and children, but it's always the children that seems to manage to get people upset. So, again, I ask you to use this in your advocacy when you talk to the UN and your political members.
இவரை போன்ற சிந்தனையாளர்கள் பலர் இன்று தமிழ் மக்களுக்காக சுயநலமில்லாத ஆதரவை வழங்கி வருவது ஆறுதலை தருகிறது. இன்றைய வரலாற்று முக்கியத்துவம் மிக்க காலப்பகுதியில் மருத்துவர் அலெக்சாண்டர் அம்பையார் போன்றோருடைய குரல்கள் ஓங்கி ஒலிக்க தமிழ் மக்களாகிய நாம் பாடுபட வேண்டும். அது அவருக்காக அல்ல, எங்களுக்காக.